August 23rd, 1939. The rolling hills of rural Lorraine, France, just a stone's throw from the German border. The air hung heavy with the scent of damp earth and ripening wheat, the kind that clings to your skin after a long day in the fields. Dawn was breaking, painting the sky in streaks of pale pink and gold, but the tranquility shattered as the first cock crowed from Henri Duval's modest chicken coop. At 42 years old, Henri was a man built like the land he worked, sturdy, unyielding, with calloused hands that spoke of endless labor. His face, weathered by sun and wind, bore the faint lines of quiet determination, eyes the color of storm clouds, scanning the horizon as if it held secrets only he could decipher. You can almost feel the chill seeping through your thin wool shirt as Henri steps out of his stone farmhouse, boots crunching on the gravel path. The war whispers had been growing louder for months, rumors of mobilization, of Hitler's demands, of borders that might soon blur into battlegrounds. But here, in this forgotten corner of Lorraine, life plodded on. Henri's wife, Marie, stirred inside, the clatter of pots signaling breakfast, while their two young sons, Jacques and little Paul, still slumbered upstairs. The farm was their world. 20 acres of pasture, a barn sagging under the weight of hay bales, and those chickens, hundreds of them, clucking and scratching in their wire enclosure, their feathers a mottled brown and white against the dew-kissed grass. Henri paused at the coop's gate, his breath visible in the crisp morning air. He scattered feed from a burlap sack, watching the birds peck eagerly. Chickens didn't care about politics or pacts. They demanded routine, and Henri provided it. But as he latched the gate, a distant rumble echoed from the east, like thunder, but too steady, too mechanical. He straightened, wiping his brow with a forearm smeared in dirt. Across the border, in Germany, the Wehrmacht was mobilizing. Newspapers from Metz spoke of it. Tanks rolling out, conscripts marching. Henri had served in the Great War, seen the mud of the trenches, the gas that choked the life from men. He wanted no part of another. By midday, the sun beat down mercilessly, turning the fields into a shimmering haze. Henri drove the old tractor, a sputtering Fordson painted red like a child's toy, across the furrows, ploughing for the autumn sowing. Sweat trickled down his back, soaking his collar as the engine's growl drowned out the world. Marie brought him a flask of cider from the house, her apron dusted with flour from kneading bread. "The radio says it's coming," she murmured, glancing nervously toward the tree line that marked the frontier. "They say the Germans want Alsace-Lorraine back. What if they cross?" Henri took a long swig, the tart liquid cooling his throat. "Let the politicians squabble," he replied, his voice steady but edged with fatigue. "We've got mouths to feed." Yet even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at him. The farm had been in his family for generations, passed down from his father, who had fought off Prussian invaders decades before. Now, with France's army mobilizing, posters calling for volunteers plastered on every village wall, Henri felt the pull. He was too old for the front lines, but the local militia needed men for watch. That night, after tucking the boys in with stories of heroic knights, omitting the bloodier parts, he sat by the hearth with Marie, the fire crackling softly. The flame danced shadows across the walls, illuminating faded photographs. Henri in uniform from 1918, Marie as a blushing bride. Outside, crickets chirped in the gathering dusk, but an unnatural quiet blanketed the border. "If it comes," Henri said finally, poking at the embers, "we protect what's ours." Marie nodded, her hand finding his, but sleep evaded them both. September blurred into a frenzy. News crackled over the wireless. The Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, Hitler's invasion of Poland on the 1st. France declared war on the 3rd, but it was the phony war, Sitzkrieg, the papers called it. No shots fired, just tense waiting. Henri joined the local guard, drilling with a rusty Berthier rifle in the village square of Villeroy. His neighbor, Old Monsieur Leclerc grumbled about it all, puffing on his pipe while tending his goats. "Mark my words, Duval," Leclerc said one crisp afternoon, as they stacked sandbags by the bridge over the Moselle River. "The Boches will come creeping like foxes in the night." Henri hefted another bag, muscles straining under the coarse burlap. The river ran lazy and brown below, reflecting the overcast sky. "And we'll be ready," he grunted, though his mind wandered to the chickens left unguarded. Back home, Marie managed the coop, her hands now blistered from the extra work. The boys helped too, Jacques, at 12, with his father's build, chasing hens with a stick. Paul, 8 and wide-eyed, collecting eggs in a wicker basket. "Papa, will the Germans eat our chickens?" Paul asked one evening, as the family gathered for a stew of potatoes and leeks. Henri ruffled the boy's hair, forcing a smile. "No, son. Chickens are for eggs and soup, not soldiers." But the question lingered like smoke. As October deepened, the first refugees trickled in from the east, families from Saarland, fleeing the German build-up. They spoke of conscription, of factories churning out Messerschmitts and Panzers. Henri sheltered a few in the barn, sharing what little milk the cows gave. One night, under a moonless sky, a man named Klaus, dishevelled with a German accent, begged for food at the door. "I'm no soldier," he whispered, eyes darting. "Just a farmer like you, trying to get to Switzerland." Marie hesitated, but Henri waved her aside. He led Klaus to the barn, slipping him bread and cheese. In the lantern's glow, Klaus spoke of the fatherland's fervour. Propaganda blaring from radios, youth indoctrinated in Hitler youth camps. "They're building an army to swallow Europe," he said, voice trembling. Henri listened, the weight of it settling like frost on his shoulders. Winter crept in, with sleet and shortages. Coal rations dwindled, the chickens huddled in the coop, their combs pale from the cold. Henri's reports to the village commandant were simple: border quiet, no unusual activity. But privately, he began jotting notes in a leather-bound journal, observations of patrols, of lights flickering across the frontier at odd hours. It started as a habit, a way to make sense of the chaos, scribbled by candlelight after the family slept. By spring 1940, the air buzzed with urgency. Allied plans leaked through underground whispers. The Maginot Line, that unbreakable wall of forts snaking along the border. Henri walked its shadow one April day, marvelling at the concrete bunkers camouflaged in the hills, machine guns glinting through slits. "This'll stop them," a young lieutenant assured him, but Henri's gut twisted. He knew borders. They were lines on maps, not barriers to ambition. Then, on May 10th, the world exploded. The wireless screamed it. German paratroopers in the Low Countries, panzer divisions slicing through the Ardennes. The phony war was over. Henri mobilized, rifle slung over his shoulder, kissing Marie goodbye as alarms wailed. "Keep the farm running," he told her, voice rough. The boys clung to his legs, tears streaking their faces. As he marched toward the front, the rumble of artillery shook the earth, and in his pocket that journal burned like a talisman. Little did he know, those scribbled reports, born of a chicken farmer's vigilance, would one day catch the eye of the invaders themselves. The thunder of engines drowned out the birdsong as Henri trudged along the dusty road toward Sedan, his boots caked in the red clay of the Ardennes. May 13, 1940. The forest pressed in close, ancient oaks and beeches whispering secrets in the wind. Their leaves a fresh green that mocked the chaos unfolding. You can smell the pine resin mixed with the acrid tang of gun oil from the rifles slung across the shoulders of his militia comrades, mostly farmers like him, faces etched with the same grim resolve. Henri's Berthier felt heavier than it had in drills, the wooden stock, worn smooth from years of neglect, now clutched like a lifeline. The column stretched ahead, a ragged line of 200 men under Captain Émile Laurent, a wiry veteran from the last war with a moustache like a broom bristle. Keep formation, Duval, Laurent barked from the lead truck, its canvas flapping like a wounded flag. Henri nodded, wiping sweat from his brow despite the chill. In his pack, the journal jostled against his rations, a tin of bully beef, a hunk of hard bread, and the last of Marie's cheese wrapped in wax paper. He'd added a hurried entry that morning before dawn. May 10, Blitzkrieg begins. Panzers through the woods. Border breached at dawn. God help us. Word spread like wildfire along the march. Rommel's Ghost Division, they called it, slicing through the Meuse like a hot knife. Henri had heard the rumors in Villeroy. Tanks that could swim rivers, Stukas diving with sirens wailing like banshees. By noon, they reached the outskirts of Sedan, where the river curved lazily under a stone bridge, its waters reflecting the smoke rising from distant fires. The air hummed with tension, punctuated by the crack of distant rifle fire. Henri's unit dug in along the embankment, shovels biting into the soft earth as officers shouted orders. Entrench here. The Boche won't cross without a fight. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the foxholes, the first shells whistled overhead. Henri pressed himself into the mud, heart pounding against the dirt wall, the metallic taste of fear on his tongue. Boom! The ground shuddered, flinging clods of soil into the air. A young private named Thomas, barely 18 with freckles across his nose, whimpered beside him. "It's nothing," Henri lied, clapping the boy's shoulder. "Just noise. We've got the Maginot." But deep down, he knew better. The line was miles south. Here, it was just men and rifles against steel. Night fell like a shroud, stars pricking the velvet sky. But sleep was a stranger. Henri pulled out his journal by the faint glow of a match, scribbling in the margins. Artillery barrage at 1800 hours. Casualties, 3 wounded. German scouts spotted East Bank. Black uniforms, moving silent. He tore the page, folding it neatly, then hesitated. Reports were for the captain, but this felt personal, a record for Marie and the boys if he didn't return. Tucking it away, he thought of the farm, the chickens scratching in the yard, Jacques practicing knots with rope from the barn. "Hold on," he whispered to the dark. Dawn broke with horror. At 0400, the Luftwaffe arrived. You feel the vibration in your chest first, a low drone swelling to a roar as Junkers Ju-87s plummeted from the clouds, their fixed landing gear like claws, sirens screaming to shatter nerves. Henri buried his face in the foxhole as bombs erupted along the line, the world erupting in flame and debris. Shrapnel whined past, one fragment grazing his arm, drawing a hot line of blood that soaked his sleeve. "Incoming!" Laurent yelled, but his voice was lost in the din. Bodies flew, torn uniforms, screams cut short. Thomas clutched his helmet, eyes wild. "They're everywhere!" By midday, the panzers came. Across the Meuse, dark shapes lumbered through the haze. Panzer IIIs with long-barreled 50mm guns, treads churning the riverbank into mud. French 75mm artillery barked in response, shells splashing harmlessly into the water as the Germans laid down smoke. Henri fired his Berthier from the lip of the trench, the recoil jarring his shoulder, bullets pinging off armor like rain on tin. "Aim for the tracks!" he shouted to the survivors, but it was futile. Sappers in rubber dinghies ferried troops across under covering fire, machine guns chattering from the hulls. The bridge exploded in a fireball, French engineers blowing it to deny the crossing, but too late. Infantry swarmed the shallows, helmets bobbing like corks, MP40s spitting lead. Henri reloaded, chambering rounds with shaking hands, the powder smoke stinging his eyes. A bullet clipped the earth near his boot, spraying grit. He dropped a German sergeant at 50 yards. Clean shot through the chest, the man crumpling like a puppet. But more poured over. Laurent fell next, a burst from a Schmeisser riddling his chest, blood bubbling on his lips as he gasped. Hold the line. Panic rippled through the ranks. Retreat became rout. Henry grabbed Thomas and ran, legs burning through the underbrush, branches whipping their faces. The forest blurred, ferns crushed underfoot, the scent of cordite and crushed leaves overwhelming. Behind, the Panzer's engines growled triumphantly, treads devouring the dead. They stumbled into a ravine by evening, collapsing amid boulders slick with moss. Henri's arm throbbed, bandaged with a strip from his shirt, but the real wound was deeper. "The farm," Thomas muttered, coughing blood from a shrapnel nick. "Will they take it?" Henri tore another page from his journal, inking details. Sedan falls, Panzers cross Meuse at 1600, losses 70% unit. Germans advance west, flames on horizon. He sealed it in an envelope addressed to the village commandant, hoping a courier might carry it back. But as stars wheeled overhead, he realized the truth. France was cracking. The next days blurred into nightmare. By May 15th, Paris radio admitted the breakthrough. Churchill called it a colossal military disaster. Henri's group, now a dozen stragglers, skirted the front, scavenging from abandoned villages. Empty houses gaped like skulls, tables set with half-eaten meals, flies buzzing over congealed stew. In one, near Rethel, they found a family of 4, throats slit by their own hands to spare worse fates. Henri crossed himself, the rosary beads from his pocket digging into his palm. They linked with remnants of the 55th Division digging in at the Aisne River. But the Blitz rolled on, Luftwaffe bombing runs, turning roads to craters, refugees clogging paths with carts piled high. Henri wrote feverishly each night by firelight, troop movements, supply dumps, even sketches of panzer formations from afar. Flank exposed north of Reims, fuel trucks vulnerable at dusk. It was instinct, a farmer noting patterns in the soil, now applied to war. June arrived with defeat. On the 14th, German vanguard entered Paris, swastikas fluttering from the Eiffel Tower. Henry heard it over a captured radio in a shattered farmhouse, static, crackling like bones breaking. King Leopold of Belgium surrendered. Italy declared war. The French army fragmented. Some fought on in pockets, others laid down arms. Henri's group dissolved near the Marne, officers vanishing into the woods. He slipped away alone, journal clutched to his chest, heading west toward Lorraine. The roads were hell, columns of prisoners marching east under guard, French blue helmets bowed, civilians fleeing with bundles on their backs, babies wailing. Henri hitched with a truck of medics, sharing cigarettes and silence. By June 17th, Pétain's voice broadcast armistice, ceasefire at 0:35 on the 25th. The world stopped. Henri sat on a ditch bank, rain pattering on his helmet, and wept for the first time since the trenches of 16. But in his pocket, those reports multiplied, a secret archive of the fall. He reached Villeroy on the 22nd, the farm a silhouette against the sunset. Smoke curled from the chimney. Marie, alive. The boys' laughter faint inside, but the border now flew the Reich's flag, patrols in grey rumbling past. As he embraced his family, the journal weighed heavy. Little did Henri know, in the chaos of occupation, those pages would find their way to unlikely hands. June 25th. 1940. The armistice ink was barely dry on the railway car in Compiègne, but its shadow already stretched across Lorraine like a gathering storm cloud. You stand in the dooryard of Henri Duval's farm, the gravel still warm underfoot from the midday sun, as a column of German motorcycles rumbles past the fence line. Their engines cough and snarl, sidecars bristling with MG-34 machine guns, the riders in Feldgrau uniforms scanning the fields with eyes like hawks. Dust billows in their wake, coating the chicken coop in a fine grit that makes the hens sneeze and flutter. Henri watches from the porch, his arm still bandaged from Sedan, the linen stiff with dried blood and sweat. Marie clings to his side, her fingers digging into his shirt, while Jacques and Paul peer from the window, faces pale smudges against the glass. The farm feels smaller now, hemmed in by the occupation's invisible walls. That first week, patrols came daily. Oberleutnant Karl Becker, a tall Saxon with a scar twisting his lip into a perpetual sneer, leading them. He spoke French with a clipped accent, demanding papers, livestock tallies, and loyalty oaths. "You will report any irregularities," Becker said on the third visit, his boots thudding on the kitchen flagstones as Marie poured ersatz coffee from a chipped pot. The brew was bitter, made from acorns and chicory, no match for the real stuff smuggled from before the lines closed. Henri nodded, jaw tight, handing over the farm's registry book. Inside, his journal lay hidden under a loose floorboard, its pages swollen with accounts of the Blitz, now useless relics. Or so he thought. Life ground on under the swastika's gaze. Rations arrived by truck from Metz, meager sacks of flour stamped with the Reichsadler, canned sausages that tasted of sawdust and saltpeter. The chickens suffered most. Feed was scarce. Their eggs requisitioned for the Wehrmacht kitchens. Henri rose before dawn, as always, slipping into the coop with a lantern's hooded glow. The beam caught the glint of wire mesh, the soft coos, turning to alarmed clucks as he checked nests. 4 eggs today, 2 for the boys, 1 for Marie's thin soup, the last to trade for butter on the black market in Villeroy. His hands, rough from ploughing and now from bandaging wounds, moved gently, but his mind raced. Refugees still trickled through the woods, whispers of resistance in the cities. But here, compliance was survival. By July, the Germans settled in. A kommandantur opened in the village hall, its windows draped in red banners, typewriters clacking like insects. Becker's unit billeted nearby in Monsieur Leclerc's old mill by the Moselle. Irony not lost on anyone. Henri avoided them, tending fields that now bordered barbed wire and watchtowers. The tractor sputtered on low-octane fuel, its red paint chipped, ploughing furrows that would yield less under the harvest quotas. Jacques helped now, the boy taller, his shoulders broadening, wielding a scythe with a seriousness beyond his years. "Papa, why do they take everything?" he asked one evening as they stacked sheaves in the barn, the air thick with chaff and the scent of drying hay. Henri paused, wiping his forehead on his sleeve, the sun setting in bloody streaks behind the hills. "To feed their war, son, but we keep what's left for us." Nights brought curfews and fear. At 2100 hours sharp, shutters slammed across Villeroy, the church bells silenced by order. Henri and Marie lay in their narrow bed, the straw mattress prickling through the sheets, listening to the patrol's boots on the road. Paul whimpered in his sleep, dreaming of the artillery he'd heard on the wireless. Henri's journal emerged again, not for the French anymore, but as a private ledger. July 12th, Becker requisitions 50 hens, morale low, rumors of Vichy collaboration. He wrote in code, initials for names, sketches of truck routes, habits from the front dying hard. But doubt crept in. What use were words when the border was theirs? The turning point came in August, under a harvest moon that silvered the wheat like frost. Becker appeared at dusk, alone this time, his staff car idling by the gate with a driver smoking a Gauloise. "Duval!" he called, voice carrying over the cricket's chorus. Henri stepped out, lantern in hand, the light carving shadows on the German's face. Marie hovered in the doorway, apron twisted in her fists. Becker held a folder. French military markings. Faded blue. "We found this in the commandant's effects. Your handwriting." Henri's stomach dropped, cold as the river in spring. The journal, somehow a courier had delivered it after Sedan, and in the rout it fell to the victors. "You observed well," Becker continued, flipping pages by lamplight. The air smelled of oil from the car, mixed with the earthy tang of turned soil. "Troop positions, weaknesses. Saved my company a probe at Reims." He closed the folder, eyes locking on Henry's. "The Führer rewards precision. Join us. Report on local matters, saboteurs, deserters. Your farm stays intact, your family fed. It was no request. The implied threat hung like smoke. Henri glanced at the coop, where a fox had been at the wire earlier, tearing at the mesh. Survival meant choices, ugly as barbed wire. He took the deal that night, over a shared bottle of looted cognac in the kitchen. Marie wept silently in the pantry, Jacques pretending to sleep upstairs. Becker outlined it. Weekly notes to the commandantur, nothing grand, just eyes on the village, the roads to Nancy, whispers from the market. In return, extra rations, a pass to cross checkpoints. Henri's pen scratched paper by candlelight after his first report, banal. No incidents. Leclerc's goats wander near patrol route, but it felt like betrayal, the ink staining his fingers black. Weeks blurred into routine. September brought cooler winds, leaves turning gold along the Moselle. But the occupation tightened. Propaganda posters plastered the walls, smiling French farmers shaking hands with Aryan soldiers, slogans in bilingual script. Henri delivered his reports in person now, slipping into the village hall under cover of morning fog. The building reeked of sauerkraut and boot polish. Clerks in crisp uniforms stamping forms. Becker reviewed them, nodding approval. "Good work, Duval. Intelligence like yours wins wars." Once, he slipped Henri an Iron Cross ribbon, 3rd class for services rendered, to pin inside his jacket. A token, more if you prove loyal. The medal burned against Henri's chest as he walked home, the path crunching underfoot. Past orchards heavy with unripe apples. Guilt gnawed like the fox at the coop. Leclerc eyed him suspiciously one market day, muttering about collaborators over a basket of turnips. Marie's eyes hollowed, her embraces cooler, but the boys thrived. Paul with full cheeks from the extra milk, Jacques learning German phrases from overheard patrols. "It's for them," Henri told her one night. The fire low in the grate, embers popping like distant gunfire. She turned away but didn't argue. By October, the reports deepened. Henri noted resistance flickers, a bridge sabotaged near Thionville, leaflets scattered in the night. He wrote them down, the pen heavy, justifying it as protection. If the farm fell to reprisals, what then? Becker praised him, inviting him to an officer's mess for schnapps and stories of the Eastern Front, tales of vast steppes and Bolshevik hordes that chilled the blood. "You're one of us now," the Oberleutnant said, clapping Henry's shoulder, the scar on his lip twitching. Outside, the wind howled through the pines, carrying echoes of what France had been. Winter loomed, snow dusting the hills. But Henri's double life took root. The journal now split, half for the Germans, half his own coded truths, hid deeper, under the barn's floorboards amid jars of preserved eggs. Little did he suspect, as the first flakes fell, that his vigilance would draw eyes from Berlin itself, turning a chicken farmer's scribbles into something far more dangerous. December 1940. The frost-cracked fields of Lorraine, where the Moselle River slithers like a silver vein through the frozen landscape. You huddle against the biting wind that whips across the open ground, carrying the sharp sting of wood smoke from distant chimneys and the faint metallic bite of snow-laden air. Henri Duval's breath clouds before him as he trudges from the barn, his wool coat, patched at the elbows with feed sacks, flapping like a tattered flag. The farmyard is a monochrome sketch. The chicken coop dusted white, hens huddled in tight clusters inside, their feathers puffed against the cold. The house's stone walls glistening with rime, windows fogged from the warmth within. At 43 now, Henri moves with a deliberate stiffness, the scar on his arm from Sedan, a dull ache under layers of scarf and glove. His boots crunch through the thin ice crust, each step echoing the isolation that has settled over Villeroy like the snow itself. Inside the kitchen, the stove's iron belly glows red, fed by scavenged twigs and the last of the apple wood. Marie stirs a pot of cabbage soup. the steam rising in lazy curls, scented with caraway seeds smuggled from a neighbor. Jacques, his voice deepening into adolescence, chops carrots with a rhythm born of necessity, while Paul sketches soldiers in charcoal on a scrap of paper by the table, French blues clashing with German greys. "Papa, will it snow all winter?" Paul asks, looking up with eyes too knowing for 8 years. Henri hangs his coat by the door, stamping snow from his feet, and ruffles the boy's hair. Enough to bury secrets, maybe. The words hang heavier than intended, but Marie doesn't glance up. Her silence has become a wall these past months. The reports have woven into the fabric of daily life, as routine as feeding the chickens. Twice a week, Henri cycles into Villeroy on the old bicycle, its tires bald and whispering over packed snow, the basket concealing a thermos of soup for show. The commandantur looms at the village end, a former schoolhouse now fortified with sandbags and a swastika flag snapping in the gusts. Oberleutnant Becker greets him in the anteroom, the air thick with the aroma of pipe tobacco and damp wool uniforms. Duval, punctual as the Reichsbahn, Becker says, his scar pulling tight in a half-smile as he takes the folded paper. Henri's latest notes on a suspicious truck seen near the bridge at midnight, its headlights dimmed, likely black marketeers, but worded to suggest Maquis scouts. Becker scans it, nodding. This could be Jews or communists. Good eyes. The extra coal arrives tomorrow. The rewards trickle in like thawing rivulets. A delivery of genuine coffee beans, their rich aroma a luxury that fills the house for days. Bolts of cloth for Marie's sewing, enough to mend the boys' coats and even fashion a new apron. Paul marvels at the warmth of his woolen mittens, no longer riddled with holes, while Jacques mutters about the dirty Boche under his breath, earning a sharp look from his father. Henri justifies it in the quiet hours, staring at the ceiling beams etched with soot from generations of fires. The farm endures, no requisitions stripping it bare, no patrols dragging men to labor camps. But the journal's hidden half grows thicker, coded entries in a shorthand of farm terms, foxes in the North Wood, 3 armed with teeth, for a resistance cell spotted caching arms. January 1941 bites harder, the river icing over in jagged plates that creak under the weight of foraging crows. The Wehrmacht digs in for the long haul, barracks sprouting like mushrooms along the border, prefab huts ringing with the clang of mess kits and the barked orders of drill sergeants. Henri's observations sharpen. He notes the patterns now, not just for survival, but from a farmer's instinct to read the land. Patrol routes that loop predictably at dusk, supply convoys vulnerable in the narrow defiles near the hills. He slips these into his reports, framing them as loyal observations to aid the occupiers. Becker, ever the opportunist, forwards the best to regimental intelligence in Metz, where a major with a monocle pores over maps under shaded lamps. One evening, as twilight bleeds purple across the snowfields, a Black Hawk staff car growls up the lane, its tires' chains rattling like bones. Henri freezes mid-chop at the woodpile, axe in hand, splinters flying from the oak log. Marie calls the boys inside, her voice tight as she bars the door. Out steps not Becker, but a stranger, Hauptmann Erich von Stahl, a Berliner with a dueling scar on his cheek and an iron cross dangling from his tunic like a badge of conquest. His adjutant, a wiry sergeant clutching a briefcase, scans the yard with a Luger at his belt. "Monsieur Duval," von Stahl says in precise French, his breath steaming, "your work precedes you." They sit in the parlor. The room's chill, chased by a fresh fire Henri stokes hastily. Marie serves weak tea in the good china, reserved for church days, her hands trembling slightly as she retreats to the kitchen. Von Stahl unfolds a map on the table, its creases worn, marked with red pencils, tracing the front lines from Sedan to the Channel. "Your Sedan notes," precise, invaluable. Saved a panzer group from ambush at the Aisne. He taps a spot near Reims, where Henry's scribbles had warned of French artillery nests. And now, these border reports, patterns in the chaos. The General Staff notices such things. Henry's throat tightens, the teacup hot against his palm. He nods, murmuring thanks, but von Stahl leans forward, eyes like polished agate. The Reich rewards utility. Continue as you are. Focus on the woods north, rumors of wireless sets. In return, he signals the adjutant, who produces a small velvet box. Inside, a medal gleams, the War Merit Cross, second class, its silver eagle clutching a swastika, ribbon black, white, red. For services to the fatherland. Pin it discreetly, it opens doors. The weight of it settles in Henry's pocket as von Stahl departs, the car's taillights fading into the night, leaving tracks in the fresh snow. Alone, he stares at the fire, the flames dancing like accusations. Marie finds him there later, her shadow long across the floorboards. "What now?" she whispers, touching the bulge in his coat. He pulls out the cross, its edges cold. "Protection," he says, but the word tastes like ash. Jacques overhears from the stairs, his face hardening in the firelight. The boy who once chased chickens now sees his father through a lens of betrayal. February thaws the edges of the freeze, mud sucking at the fields as Henry plows with the mule now, the tractor's fuel rationed for military trucks. His reports multiply, detailing a foiled sabotage, a line cut near the rail yard, blamed on partisans, thanks to his tip on footprints in the snow. Becker toasts him at the mess one foggy morning, schnapps burning down his throat amid laughter from officers swapping tales of Poland's mud and Norway's fjords. "You're a natural, Duval, like a U-boat captain reading the waves." The praise curdles, but the farm blooms under it. Seeds arrive for spring planting. Contraband radios silenced before reprisals hit the village. Yet cracks form. Leclerc confronts him by the market well, water buckets sloshing, his pipe clenched in fury. "Selling us out for eggs? The Maquis will string you up." Henri meets his gaze. The crowd murmurs a low hum. "Watch your goats, old man. Not everyone's a hero." He cycles home with a heavier heart, the medal chafing like a brand. That night, thunder rumbles, not storm, but bombers high overhead, Allied raids testing the defenses. Paul wakes screaming, and Henri holds him, whispering of chickens safe in the coop. As March greens the hills, von Stahl's visits increase, briefings in the staff car, maps unrolled on the hood under camouflage netting. The east beckons. The Hauptmann confides one drizzly afternoon, rain pattering on the canvas. "Barbarossa, your eyes here keep the rear secure." Henri nods, inking more. Truck serials guard rotations. The journal's secret half records the cost. Families vanishing in night roundups, whispers of deportations to the east. Guilt festers like a splinter under the skin. By April, the medal's shine dulls, but its power grows. Becker promotes him informally to auxiliary observer, granting access to the officer's canteen, sausages and real bread, conversations laced with plans for the summer offensive. Henri listens, the Iron Cross hidden, but its echo in every nod. Little does he know, as the first warm rains soften the earth, that Berlin's gaze sharpens, drawing a simple farmer into the war's maw, where loyalty blurs into peril. April 1941. The mud-slicked pastures of Lorraine, where the Moselle's banks swell with meltwater, churning brown and restless under a sky heavy with promise of rain. You slog through the churned earth beside Henri Duval, your boots sinking into the mire with each step, the cold sludge seeping through leather cracks to numb your toes. The air carries the loamy scent of awakening soil, mingled with the faint rot of last autumn's leaves, unearthed by the plough. Henri grips the mule's reins loosely. the beast's flanks steaming in the chill morning, its harness creaking as it hauls the harrow across the field. At 43, his frame has hardened further under the winter's strain, shoulders broad from endless labor, but his eyes, storm-grey and shadowed, betray the toll of divided loyalties. The War Merit Cross tucks against his chest beneath the flannel shirt, a secret weight that pulls like an anchor chain. Back at the farm, the first green shoots poke through the compost heap, a stubborn defiance against the occupation's grip. Marie works the garden plot, her spade turning clods with mechanical precision, knees muddied under her skirt. She's thinner now, cheekbones sharp as the scythe blade hanging in the shed, her once warm smiles replaced by tight-lipped endurance. Jacques hauls water from the well, the bucket sloshing against his thigh, his 13-year-old frame wiry and alert, ears tuned to every patrol's distant rumble. Paul trails him, clutching a wooden toy soldier carved from barn scrap, its uniform a crude mix of French kepi and German helmet, a child's innocent blur of enemies. Henry's reports have become a lifeline, threading through the days like the mule's traces. That afternoon, as clouds bruise the horizon, he pedals into Villeroy, the bicycle's chain rattling over ruts filled with standing water. The village stirs under curfew's easing. Shutters creak open. Women in headscarves barter potatoes at the market stall, their voices a low murmur laced with coded complaints. The commandantur buzzes like a hive, sentries in steel helmets pacing the sandbagged entrance, Mauser rifles slung low. Oberleutnant Becker waits in the back office, maps pinned to the walls like flayed skins. The room's air thick with the sour tang of unwashed uniforms and ink from the Gestapo files stacked on his desk. Duval, Becker greets, waving him to a stool by the potbelly stove, its heat warring with the damp chill. He unfolds Henry's latest note, details on a wireless signal traced to the old quarry north of the river, faint beeps caught on a patrol's receiver. Spot on. We raided at dawn. 2 operators, French engineers from Nancy, rifles and codes. Becker's scar twists in satisfaction as he stamps the paper, adding it to a dossier bound in black cloth. Von Stahl sends regards. Your work feeds the beast. Barbarossa rolls east soon. Keep the rear clean. Henri nods, the stove's warmth prickling his skin, but his mind flashes to the quarry. He'd seen the men once. Shadows slipping through the woods with a rucksack that hummed faintly. Reporting them bought coal and seed, but their screams echo in his dreams, ghosts in the coop at night. Becker slides a ration chit across the desk. Extra flour, sugar even, a rarity sweeter than cognac. And this, the officer adds, producing a sealed envelope, from Berlin, invitation to Metz, auxiliary briefing. Wear the cross. The ride home blurs in a drizzle that beads on Henry's eyelashes, the envelope crackling in his pocket like dry leaves. Marie spots it at supper, the family gathered around a table lit by a single oil lamp, bowls of barley porridge steaming faintly. "What's that?" she asks, spoon pausing midway, her voice a whisper sharp as frost. Jacques glances up from his portion, eyes narrowing while Paul pokes at his food, oblivious. Henri unfolds it slowly, the wax seal breaking with a soft pop. Official letterhead, eagle rampant. Meeting in Metz, for observers like me. Marie's face hardens, lines etching deeper. Like you, a farmer turned spy for the wolves? The words hang, the lamp's flame flickering as if in protest. Jacques pushes back his chair, storming out to the yard without a word, the door banging like a gunshot. May unfolds with deceptive calm, the fields greening under tentative sun, wildflowers nodding along the fence rows. But the Wehrmacht stirs. Troop trains clatter through the night, flatbeds groaning under crates of ammunition bound east, soldiers waving from open cars, their cheers muffled by the engine's roar. Henri's cycle to Metz comes on the 15th, a grey dawn breaking as he joins a convoy of auxiliaries. French collaborators in ill-fitting coats, faces a mix of eagerness and dread. The road winds past checkpoints where sentries wave them through with lazy salutes, the barrier poles lifting like drawbridges to hell. The briefing hall in Metz is a commandeered theatre, velvet seats ripped for kindling. Stage now a podium under floodlights that buzz like angry hornets. Hauptmann von Stahl strides in at 1,000 hours, flanked by SS officers in black, their boots polished to mirrors, death's head badges glinting. 200 men fill the rows, the air humming with nervous coughs and the creak of chairs. "Gentlemen," von Stahl begins, his voice amplified through a crackling microphone, "the fatherland stands at the precipice of glory. Operation Barbarossa will crush the Slavic horde, but victory demands vigilance at home." He paces, gesturing to a screen where slides click, maps of the Eastern Front, arrows thrusting like spears, photos of captured Soviet tanks, twisted metal smoldering. Henri sits midway back, the cross pinned inside his jacket pressing against his ribs. A talisman or noose. Von Stahl calls him forward unannounced, Monsieur Duval, our Lorraine exemplar. Spotlight hot on his face, Henri stands on the stage, heart thudding like a diesel engine. The Hauptmann recounts the Sedan notes, the border watches, voice rising with each detail. This man's eyes pierce the fog of defeat, turning farmers' wisdom to the Reich's shield. Applause ripples, hesitant from the French, thunderous from the Germans. Von Stahl pins a new ribbon to Henry's lapel, an upgrade, the War Merit Cross First Class, gold-edged eagle gleaming under the lights. For extraordinary service, Heil Hitler. The hall echoes with salutes, Henry's hand rising mechanically, the metal cool against his tunic. Cameras flash, propaganda for the local rag, his face frozen in a nod. Back in his seat, nausea rises, the awards wait a brand. Von Stahl pulls him aside after, in a side room reeking of cigar smoke and stale beer. "Berlin watches you now. Report directly. Any whispers of invasion fever here, plots from London. Your family, untouchable." The Hauptmann claps his shoulder, dueling scar pale in the dim light. "You're the bridge, Duval. Don't burn it." June heats the air, hay scenting the breeze as Henry mows the upper field, scythe swinging in arcs that whistle through the grass. The new cross hides in a tin box under the floorboards, beside the journal's dual pages, official tallies on one side, veiled truths on the other. Eagles nest in East Woods, 6 with claws from sea, for a downed RAF pilot, sheltered by Maquis, glimpsed from afar. Guilt surges with each entry, visions of the quarry men haunting the strokes. Marie confronts him in the barn, one sweltering noon, pitchfork in hand, hay dust motes dancing in the sunbeams. "That medal, it's blood money. Jacques won't speak to you." The village whispers traitor. Her eyes, red-rimmed, bore into him. Henri sets down the feed bucket. The chickens clucks a frantic chorus outside. "Without it, we'd starve. The boys would be orphans in a camp." She turns away, shoulders shaking, the rift widening like a fault in the earth. Patrols intensify, rumors of Barbarossa's launch buzzing like flies. Henri spots anomalies, a coded message scratched on a fence post near the river. "Liberté 14 Juillet, Maquis signal for a drop." He reports it, framing as vandalism, but delays the note a day, buying time. Becker raids anyway, dragging 3 villagers, Leclerc among them, for questioning, their cries carrying on the wind. Henri watches from the ridge, fists clenched, the cross burning like fever. By month's end, as thunderheads build over the border, a courier arrives at dusk, sealed orders from von Stahl. Escalation, monitor rail junctions, award merits more. Henri seals his response by lantern light, the ink blurring slightly from sweat-damp fingers. The farm endures, but fractures spiderweb through it. Jacques vanishing into the woods for hours, Marie's touches fleeting. Paul drawing swastikas in the dirt only to kick them away. As fireflies wink in the twilight, Henri wonders if the medals chain him to redemption or ruin. The war's tide rising to drown them all. June 22nd, 1941. The borderlands of Lorraine, where the Moselle River runs sluggish and swollen, its banks fringed with willows drooping like weary sentinels under a relentless summer sun. You trudge alongside Henri Duval through the knee-high wheat, the stalks rasping against your trousers like whispered warnings, the heat pressing down like a damp blanket soaked in sweat. Dust clings to your skin, gritty and inescapable, as the distant rumble of troop trains echoes from the east, Barbarossa's machinery grinding into motion, devouring the horizon. Henri pauses to wipe his brow with a rag, stained from the morning's milking, his face etched deeper now, lines carved by months of duplicity. The War Merit Cross First Class weighs in his shirt pocket, a talisman turned millstone, its gold edges dulled by handling. At 44, he moves with the caution of a man threading a minefield, every glance toward the woods, a calculation of shadows and secrets. The farm clings to routine, a fragile anchor in the storm. Marie tends the vegetable patch, her hoe biting into the dry earth with mechanical fury, pulling weeds that seem to mock her efforts. She's a ghost of the woman who once laughed over cider, her frame gaunt, eyes averted during meals where the family picks at rye bread and watery stew. Jacques, now 14 and towering like a young oak, slips away at dawn, ostensibly to check traps in the forest, but Henri knows better. The boy returns with muddied boots and evasive stares, his resentment a silent blade. Paul, clinging to childhood at 9, chatters about schoolyard games twisted by propaganda, drawing maps of battles where chickens lead charges against tanks. "Papa, will the Big Eagles win?" he asks one evening, crayon in hand, oblivious to the irony. Henri forces a smile, ruffling the boy's hair. "The strongest ones always do, son." Henri's reports flow like the river now. Weekly dispatches to von Stahl's office in Metz, details on rail shipments, whispers of sabotage from the market, even the faint crackle of hidden radios in the hills. He frames them carefully, a farmer's ledger of threats. Wolves circling south fence, 4 with hidden dens, code for a Maquis group, caching explosives near the tracks. Each submission buys respite, a truck of fertilizer for the fields, vaccines for the dwindling hens, a pass shielding the family from roundups sweeping the villages. Becker delivers the perks with a wink, his scar a permanent leer in the Kommandantur's dim light. Berlin sings your praises, Duval. The Führer's eyes on you. Oh, but the cost mounts. Leclerc vanishes one night, hauled east in a black van after a tip on smuggled arms. Henri's tip, delayed, but damning. The old man's pipe lies abandoned by the well, a relic gathering dust. July scorches the land, the air shimmering over the pastures, as German divisions thin out, siphoned to the Russian front. Replacements arrive, green recruits from Bavaria, faces flushed with zeal, drilling in the fields with carabiner 98s that snap like whips. Henri observes from afar, noting their lax perimeters, the unguarded fuel dumps under camouflage nets. He writes it all, the pen scratching parchment by the barn's lantern glow, the chicken's soft clucks a mocking chorus. Von Stahl summons him to a forward post near the Saar, the Hauptmann's tent pitched amid pines that sigh in the hot wind. Maps sprawl across a folding table, pins marking the eastern thrust, vast arrows clawing toward Moscow. "The motherland bleeds you dry," von Stahl says, pouring schnapps from a flask, the liquid burning like regret. "But your vigilance here, priceless. One more push, secure the west, and glory follows." Henri nods, the schnapps settling heavy in his gut, but his mind drifts to Jacques, who returned that morning with a fresh bruise on his cheek, fell chasing rabbits, the boy lied. Von Stahl senses the fracture, leaning in with a conspirator's smile. "Family first, eh? Pin this openly now." He hands over a case. The Kriegsverdienstkreuz, with swords, an upgrade etched in silver. The blades, symbolizing frontline valor, despite Henri's distance from it. For the Reich's unseen warriors, wear it at the next briefing, Berlin's photographers come. The metal chills Henri's palm as he cycles home. The road pitted with craters from a recent RAF raid. Bomb scars blooming like black flowers. August brings the first tremors of reversal. News trickles via contraband wireless. Stalin holding at Smolensk. British commandos raiding Dieppe coast. The farm's nights grow restless. Patrols doubling as whispers of Allied landings swell. Henri's dual journal swells too. Official pages crisp with feigned loyalty. The hidden ones a frantic scrawl of truths. Eagles falter east. Home nests stir. He tips off a Maquis drop anonymously, delaying a report on parachutes sighted. But Becker's net tightens anyway. Roundups claim neighbors, families torn from beds, trucks rumbling into the dawn fog. Marie confronts him in the coupe one sweltering noon, feathers swirling like snow in the heat. Jacques is gone, joined them, the woods. Her voice cracks, hands clutching a broken egg, yolk dripping like blood. Henri's world tilts. He searches the tree line that evening, calling until dusk, the cross mocking from his pocket. September's equinox ushers decay. Leaves yellow along the Moselle, mirroring the Wehrmacht's fraying edges. Desertions up, morale cracking like dry soil. Von Stahl's visits cease, reassigned to the Italian theatre, but his legacy lingers in orders. Escalate surveillance. Invasion imminent. Henri's final report, inked by firelight, details a phantom cell, his own invention to buy time. Becker promotes him publicly at a village assembly, the square strung with bunting, the Kriegsverdienstkreuz pinned to his chest under flickering torches. Hero of the border. The officer toasts, crowd murmuring, some cheers, more glares. The medal gleams, a crown of thorns. Jacques' absence hollows the applause. Winter 1944 crashes in with Allied boots. D-Day's echoes reach Lorraine by summer's end. Patton's tanks slashing through the hedgerows. The front buckles. Villeroy's commandantur burns in reprisal fires. Becker fleeing east with a pistol in hand. Henri hides the journals in the well, medals buried with them as GIs roll in, olive-drab jeep splashing mud, Thompson submachine guns at the ready. "You the collaborator?" a sergeant barks, rifle leveled, but Marie steps forward, voice steady. "He fed us, saved us." Jacques emerges from the Maquis ranks, rifle slung, eyes meeting his father's in wary truce. The war ends in May 1945, but trials linger. Henri stands before a purge tribunal in Nancy, the room stuffy with cigarette haze. His reports exhumed like corpses. The medals, confiscated, melted down, become exhibits, symbols of a farmer's fall. Accusations fly, traitor, enabler, but witnesses speak, neighbors spared by his whispers, the family intact. Survival, the judge rules, sentencing suspended, a black mark etched forever. Back on the farm, under a free sky, Henri scatters feed to the rebuilt coop. Hens clucking in the dawn light. Jacques works beside him now, silent but present. Paul chasing chicks with laughter unshadowed. Marie's hand finds his at supper. Forgiveness, a quiet thaw. The journals burn in the hearth that night, ashes swirling up the chimney like released ghosts. A chicken farmer's reports, once his chain, now dissolve into wind. Medals awarded, burdens lifted. The land enduring as always,